I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. I am Ben Detrick. Jordan Redaelli is on an island that does not have coronavirus on vacation. Andrew Kuo takes 0 vacation days and no days off.
Best St. Patrick's Day ever, Ben. I'm hyped. I've already had my corned beef, my Guinness. I've done a little dance. I've listened to some bagpipes. Wow, man, what a day. What a day.
For anyone confused as to whether this is a new podcast or yesterday's podcast in which
I was
Andrew
excited,
Kuo
but not actually living in the world.
voiced the exact same enthusiasm for the Beantown Media Mafia's favorite holiday, St. Paddy's Day. This is a new episode, now marking the 5th consecutive weekday that your favorite lads, the world's most influential basketball podcast, have stepped up to the plate.
I take no St. Patrick days off, man.
Wait, is today St. Patrick's Day?
Yes, today is actually St. Patrick's Day.
Worst St. Patrick's Day ever, other than all of the previous ones.
I grew up with a bunch of Fordham kids who are Irish Catholic, and this was like a big week, and today was a huge day for them.
Best St. Patrick's Day ever.
Yo, man, I do have fond memories of it before I realized that it didn't really include me. But when I was a young teen, I was like, cool, everyone's getting together. New York is popping. But I soon realized it did not include me in that celebration.
I remember being up around Riverdale, which is a section connected to the Bronx. It's technically the Bronx, but it is different in terms of a neighborhood.
Fordham University, man.
Right, so this is why I'm mentioning this neighborhood. It's exactly where you are also referring to. And man, if you got down around Broadway, which was Kingsbridge, the Irish really went hammer. Ooh. It was insane. 8 in the morning, 9 in the morning of St. Patrick's Day, vomiting, throwing up on the street, wearing green top hats. It was a real scene.
It's a skill, man. Like to be able to party like that is just tremendous, and I gotta give it to these revelers. I cannot do that. I have like a window. As soon as like I have a beer, I'm good for like a couple of hours. Then I turn into a pumpkin and go home. But like, wow, these guys. You're right. Like growing up, I just remember these people our age just hammered. As soon as I stepped out the door, I'm like, what a wonderful day.
One time, I went to the St. Patrick's Day parade because, if I remember correctly, you don't get off on St. Patrick's Day. It's like a normal day, right?
I mean, Fordham kind of had a wink. I think all the schools and university was like, it's like New Year's day after day.
Well, New Year's day after day, everyone has off. No one works on January 1st.
Day after day.
It's literally a pub. Oh, okay.
Like January 2nd. It's like, hey, everyone's here, I guess, in theory.
So I feel like I was working in Midtown. This is a very long time ago. And went over to watch the parade during my lunch break. And was hoping that because I have Irish ancestry, it would resonate with me. Like the sound of the bagpipes would conjure ancient spirits in my blood. It's just a bunch of like drunk cops.
Yeah. It's all the people you usually be scared of drunk. like cops, firemen, and priests. It's like, not the priest part.
The dregs of society.
No. But like
down to the dregs of their beverages.
And like I love my Irish Catholic friends, and like, but it's been a tough decade a little bit for those guys, even though my favorite actors, Ben Affleck, Matt Damon, are holding strong. They're surviving the test of celebrity time.
Your favorite movie is Rounders.
Okay, what characters in Rounders coincide with what Boston Celtic greats? Go.
I don't even know if Rounders is based in Boston. In my mind, it is.
It's New York, right?
I think it's New York.
It's
I'm
Westchester.
like 99% sure it's
Yeah.
New York.
It's like Yonkers or something where I grew up. Yeah. I even forgot who's in that movie. Is a Wahlberg in that movie? No, we got Edward Norton, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Is
Anyway,
it-
shout out to Yonkers, DMX, The Locks,
that's right.
Dragon,
Moby.
Eve.
I remember Moby had a radio show up in Yonkers, local radio, of like techno music on Saturdays, and it was awesome. He was so good.
In that same era, when I was hanging around in the Kingsbridge region, but as I said, up in the like 231st, Henry Hudson, up there, everyone would go up to White Plains.
Yeah, man. Go sneaker shopping. Mob Deep.
Right. So you go to Cross County Mall.
Hells yeah. I
And
grew
we're
up there.
walking to the So I remember walking to the Blockbuster, and like and someone's like, "You just missed Jada Kiss." I'm like, "Oh man,
A Locks was here. It's like, what?
we could have seen a lock."
Which lock?
And then we would go to this little diner up there, and I remember one time we realized that it seemed to have this like back room that people weren't allowed to go into, and there were cars in the parking lot, but no one was inside the diner. It was very curious. And then as we were getting into the car to leave, a member of the New York Knicks,
Which
who was not in the restaurant, I'm not going to say,
Wow.
walked out of the diner. He was not in there, but he came out and got into like, a luxury car and drove off. And we're like, what just happened? This was a little diner in the middle of nowhere. No one was in the place.
There was no need to enforce it, yet a Knick player was in the premises.
He was self-relegating.
Are we in relegation?
I'm not going to say who it was because it seems that there was something nefarious going on, and I just don't want to
Maybe they were just
lead to speculation unfairly.
They were
They were not in that restaurant, though, dude. I know that as a fact.
I mean, honestly, like when you get down to crime on that level, it's just like, what's racketeering? It's like, okay, somebody had a gun, someone was betting on horses, someone owed someone money. I'm like, that's it. I've seen Mark Wahlberg movies.
Yeah,
Shit
if I was going to bet on an illegal activity said member of the Knicks was involved in, it would be like buying a bag of weed.
Yeah,
A big bag, like a duffel bag of weed, but a bag of weed nonetheless. It would not be illegal gambling or anything like that, or anything awful. I would just be like, oh, this is where he buys big bags of weed.
yeah. And that's where I'm desensitized, because you know that place on Spring Street, Rice to Riches, that rice pudding shop? I remember they got busted for being a horse betting ring in the back. And I was like, oh, that's kind of charming. And then I thought about all the lives that probably ruined. And I was like, it's probably not as charming as I think.
Well, we romanticize all of those little sort of, I guess, nostalgic illegalities on Graham Street in Williamsburg, which was a mafia neighborhood,
Yeah.
like infamously so. I think it was at Starlight Lounge was there. Donnie Brasco was set on
Donovan Brasco.
Is it Graham Avenue? Graham Street, Graham Avenue.
Is-
And there was a really good deli there that had great Italian food and was famous for their sandwiches. The Godfather, nonetheless. But they got shut
Oh,
down because
yeah.
they were running, they were bookies. They had racketeering. They kept everything on like longhand in notebooks, and then got busted, and like everyone went down, and they closed the place. And I'm like, ooh, that's so exciting. But where am I going to get a sandwich?
Right.
Everyone loses.
I mean, I always thought that about every Italian place in New York City growing up. Like whether that be like a bakery or a pizza shop, I'm like, can I place a bet here? It's like, of course you can. Yes. And what kind of, how large or small pie, it's like, you guys make the best pies, and please don't break my legs. It's like Scott Norwood, he just missed that field goal, man.
Sir, this is a Ray's pizza.
Not to mention, Ray's Pizza. I was like,
And you're just there winking rampantly. Yeah, I'll take one slice on the Philly in the third. Wink, 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 wink.
They had the restaurant next door to the old Rays that had no one in it ever, usually. And I was like, can I bet on a basketball game here? Probably so.
Hi, what's the vig?
Yeah. If I can't bet on a basketball game and somehow I'm the first person to ask if I could, they'd be like, all right, yeah, we're setting up this business. This sounds fun. What you got? You got friends? Like, who's in?
Also, respect to Uncut Gems for introducing the word parlay to basketball Twitter.
The most influential Jewish identity basketball drama
Ever.
That movie's amazing.
So how are you dealing with captivity?
It's what I haven't gone out in days now. I try not to count because I'm going a little stir crazy. I've been expecting a sort of shaming, for lack of a better words, seeing how peer pressure is going to work about this whole thing and how people will kind of influence the behavior moving forward of what we're going to do. And last night, late at night, it was like 1 or 2 a.m. I was thinking about maybe dashing off to the supermarket and picking up some groceries. I figured in the middle of the night, it would be the most harmless. No one's out. Everyone's sleeping. I'm awake.
What grocery store are you going to in the middle of the night?
Key Food on Avenue A is 24-hour. I assume it's still open. But Key Food is the spot that I usually go to in the middle of the night. And I was shamed into staying home, but my original conceit was I should probably stay home. And one of our buddies was like, you're the problem, pretty much. And I'm like, what can I do? It's like, you should get delivery. I'm like, well, first of all, having a delivery person running around town, interacting with as many people as possible is probably not good either. And I don't know the right way to do this, and I'm willing to be shamed. I am not without shame, but like...
You are fully inhabited by shame, as far as I know.
I do stuff wrong all the time, especially with social distancing.
Your personality is shame incarnate.
Mm-hmm. Shame God, they call me on the course.
Shout out to our fans who've been around since the Shame God Hour.
So what can we do, man? Have you been shamed yet?
I have not been shamed, but I did see I wouldn't say it's a viral clip, but there was a clip going around of a bunch of, I don't know if it was Park Slope. We're going to say it was Park Slope. It seemed Park Slope-ish. It was certainly Brooklyn. And it was people on their fire escapes shaming pedestrians for being outside. And they were yelling, go home, go inside. And they tried to start chanting, flatten the curve, which is just like a bad, bad chant.
Not good. It doesn't have a hook to it.
Well, flatten.
Not a cool word.
Flatten the curve. I guess you could Derek Jeter it. Flatten the curve.
You could put it to like a White Stripes tune.
In the curve.
Flatten the curve. That's kind of cool, though.
Yeah, that's really good. That's great. So they're yelling at a pedestrian for being outside, and that's ridiculous. I get it if people are having a, coronavirus flash mob and you want to shame them, but just walking down the street and talking with someone, we're not under lock-in. We're not under community quarantine. You're allowed to be outside. You should go out and walk around a little bit.
Yeah, I think so.
You got to get groceries. You got to walk a dog. You have to have a flash mob. There's all sorts of reasons to be out there.
I know. It's like, yeah, I might step out today. Just a straight line. Everything is a straight line. Go get your stuff and come back. I was thinking about, like, in my weird mind, I was like, should I, like, slide $20 bills under the gates of, like, my favorite spots? I'm like, no, this is going to blow away in the wind. I got to do something smarter than that. But, like, I couldn't do anything, right? Like, I wanted to go to all of our spots and see if I could just, like, give them money. But, like, that doesn't do anything. The government has to step in. But, yeah, I don't know. We are not in quarantine. We are social distancing. So until people put us into a different set of rules, yeah, just take a straight line to what you need to do and be smart.
I've been trying to come up with small missions just
like
to
this.
get out of the house and to do something. So yesterday I decided I'm going to buy some lamb and a chicken from a place that is a significant walk away. It's like a 40-minute walk. So I went and did that. On the walk, I ran into a friend and his girlfriend. And then as we were talking after doing little elbow bumps, another person we know showed up. And it was like, okay, this is illicit. There's 4 of us now.
What is this, 2008?
What's happening? And we all kind of like fled and went our other directions.
Sure.
And then I went on my chicken mission. And what I've realized is that I'm getting paranoid.
Yeah.
And it's obviously the conditions of our interactions with people. But now you're like, okay, so you're handing me money with your gloves, but those gloves are touching other people's money. And now I'm getting a bag from you, and that bag has been touched by someone else. And do I have to come home and like rinse this plastic bag from the supermarket off? Do I have to rinse off my Oatly oat milk carton? There's a lot of mental steps when you start getting really paranoid.
Yeah, I brought my Dribble Bias cookies bag, available at cookieshoops.com. That
Limited
takes no
supply
days off.
left.
Yeah, a couple left. I brought it to the supermarket, and the person behind the counter was like, "Oh, give me your bag. I'll pack it." I'm like, "No, you don't have to touch it." They're like, no, it's easier this way because I don't want your stuff to get packed improperly. So I gave him my bag, not because I was scared of his germs, but it was covered in cat hair. And I'm like, I don't want to do this to you, buddy. My house is an interesting place full of cats, and I forgot to roller my bag before I stepped out because I didn't assume someone was going to take it. But yeah, I looked at it kind of like a video game or like a Terminator scenario. Instead of Sarah Connor, I was just trying to find corona bacteria virus molecules, and I was like, that handle probably has it, this plastic bag probably has it, these chives that I picked up with my unwashed hand probably have it. And it's just like, I've been trying to fight off germophobia my whole life, and this is challenging, man.
Right, and I'm not a natural germaphobe, but now you just start seeing the connection between things. You're like, okay, so I walked up to the supermarket and I touched this thing, and the woman behind the counter has touched this thing, and now I've touched that, and now I'm coming home and I'm touching the doorknob on my building and my keys, and then and my wallet and my credit card, and you're like, it just keeps spiraling. There's not a good way out of this, and then you're living like a maniac where you're just frantically not touching things and then trying to sterilize everything else, which is probably smart, but it's a very weird way of living. When I went out yesterday and my regular coffee shop was closed, I went somewhere else. And the whole time in there, I'm like, all right, who is this guy? What is he touching?
Yeah.
Who's touched these lids? Who's touched the sugar packs?
Right.
So today I like made my own coffee.
Whoa.
And I feel better about it.
Barista Ben. I'm into this.
Barista boys.
Right. And like you can
but it messed up my routine because I didn't get a chance to like walk around in the morning. So I'm just like, okay, I guess my day has started at home.
Routines, I mean, we're trying to pod every day, right? Like we got to have new routines a little bit. And yeah, but we're
From noon to 1 takes.
But we're like one step away from being those like Fort Greene Park Slope people yelling like, stay inside your house. You know, like that just turns into that being like, I've been so responsible, and there you are in your green leprechaun plastic hat, just like touching everything with your weird Corona Guinness.
Well, that's what it is, right? It's like, look, I'm being careful. I'm taking all these precautions. I'm trying to help people, and you're undoing it.
Yeah, exactly. But this is like, you know,
you and your Mardi Gras red and orange and white necklace, you're undoing all of my hard work of not being sick.
Is it Massachusetts Mardi Gras or is it New Orleans St. Patrick's Day? How far does Mardi Gras go back?
How far does it go down this rabbit hole?
Did Mardi Gras exist outside of the U.S.? No, right? Do they do it in France?
Fat Tuesday in France. They don't like anything fat in France. They fat shame in France.
Do they? So Zion Williamson wouldn't work overseas?
You know what? You know what is a real concern?
What?
It's exactly what you're talking about. people fattening up during this hiatus. Have you tried to exercise yet?
Suckers, I've been exercising like a demon at home.
Really?
I'm gonna get ripped, man. Next time you see me, you're gonna be like, cool, there's a short Asian guy here to meet me, but where's Kuo? I'm like, Ben, it's me. I'm just ripped now.
Are you seriously going to be ripped?
No, because I'm working out super hard and then just like shoveling pasta into my face, my worried face.
So
I
it's
eat
more
my
of a-
feelings.
So it's more of a neutral buoyancy that you're striving for.
My whole life. Like, I eat everything I feel, and as you know, I have a lot of whist. So I cycle off that whisk on my stationary bike, and then I fill it up with some delicious pasta.
Carb upon carb.
I'm at the point in my life where I don't really care about getting skinny as much. Okay, this is weird. We are not young, but we are not old. We're right in the middle. But do you feel like you're in the place where losing weight is more alarming than gaining weight?
That's an interesting way of phrasing it. I would say no, but I get what you're going at, because generally when older people are shedding pounds, it's a bad sign.
It's a bad sign, and I think a few months ago I was too busy, I was stressed, I was working on stuff, I wasn't eating like delicious carb on carb food, and I lost a bunch of weight, and I didn't like it. 10 years ago I would have been like sick. I got a cold and I lost 5 pounds. Awesome. I'm a better person. But
at least you were able to fit into your Knicks shorts that you wore to the bar every night a decade ago.
A decade ago, for I think 3 years, it was 3 or 4 years, mostly 3 years. Knicks shorts, wallabies with no socks, and a big white tee, probably like large. I was psyched. I was excited about that until it took 3 years for my very, very gracious inner circle to be like, what's up with your style, dude? I'm like, what do you mean? I've been doing this forever. They're like, it's not a good look. I'm like,
how many years ago was this, would you say? Were we saying a decade ago?
No, it was like
7 years ago?
5 years ago.
5 years ago.
Because I was doing Porzingis stuff then.
Oh, wow. So we've got about 10 years before this comes back in vogue.
Yes, I'll bring it back in 10 years. I'm
saying the natural timeline is roughly 15 years. So
I'm definitely dressing like I was 15 years ago. Dude, I want to buy pleated pants now. I've been shopping for pleated pants.
Pleated pants are great.
Right? Do you have a pair?
I sure do.
I'm going to go for it. Not Cavaricci style, but just like J. Crew. I just want a good pleat.
There's nothing like a good pleat.
I mean, West Side Story is coming out, so it's the time, man. But are you working out? Are you shooting imaginary
So
hoops?
I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to exercise, because for me it was basketball, like playing
touching net
3-4 times a week, going out there and slapping glass on my haters. And now, yes, I'm Euro stepping around the house a little bit. I will
just
do a
have
spin
chairs
move.
set up in your living room.
It's like the fabled combine workout. I'm taking down these chairs. I'm juking the hell out of stools.
Do you put
I'll do a
print out
spin.
faces and tape them on there?
It's a little bit like Tom Hanks, who is now out of the hospital.
Oh, is he good to go?
I don't know, but he's out of the hospital.
Good.
But yeah, I'll do a spin move and a little step back fake jumper. I might do a monster slam on a door frame. So what I'm saying here is
Huge.
I need a new way of exercising. And I've seen a few body weight ones floating around on social media. There's one that's like this. I think our friend Jason Concepcion had mentioned it, and I think it's called like the pyramid, where you start out doing like 50 jumping jacks, then 40 of something, then 30 of something.
Yeah, it's prison exercises. I was going to say, that's the one. Those are really hard.
So there's those, and then, yeah, there's a few. So I'm trying to pick out one that I can start on. My major concern is like, I don't have a pad for the floor, and there's people who live beneath me.
Yeah, it sucks.
I think it could cause a real lot of rambunctiousness. like me leaping on hardwood floors above my landlord seems a little dicey.
All you need is your carpet and some hokas.
I have the hokas.
Do you have a carpet?
No.
Yeah, neither do I. I'm not a carpet guy. Yeah, that is a New York City issue.
And if I go outside to play basketball at the park, I'm worried that people will approach me and I'll have to be like, dude, I'm not playing basketball with you, man.
Yeah.
I'm just here to get some shots up.
Right.
A
Well,
basketball Grinch.
like I have an exercise bike and I have weights that I do like a routine with on the bike. So I have equipment, but if you didn't have equipment, like even doing 150 push-ups through the course of a day will be awesome for you. You know, like there's nothing stopping you from doing something like that.
Well, I'm going to come up with a routine and I'm going to become cock diesel.
I know. And are you going to get cock diesel and then bounce, like find your middle with that chicken lamb dish? That are you going to cook those together?
No. Don't be silly.
So are you going to freeze
What do you
one?
think? I'm making some sort of modern
Turducken.
paella?
Are you going to freeze one?
No, I cooked the lamb yesterday. I'm going to cook the chicken tonight, maybe.
Wow.
There's
Wow.
no stopping this cooking fest that's happening over here.
Keto boys over here. Yeah, so I have to.
This is our new life.
Well, I've been on this. My buddy Pascal, man, he told me to get one of these bikes 8 years ago. They're $170 online, and it changed my damn life. I do 8 miles. It usually takes me like 35 minutes. 10 minutes, I go fast as I can. Another 10 minutes, I do like 5-pound weights in each hand, like a whole routine. And then I crank it up on a harder speed for 10 more minutes, and it wipes me out. It's awesome. I get to watch classic basketball games and laugh at Shaquille O'Neal getting dominated by Greg Ostertag.
I still haven't gone back and watched old basketball. I see the clips floating around. It's like, ooh, Danny Granger. Look at Rudy Gay in his prime. Like Jaylen Brown was a beast.
Jaylen Brown.
In the day.
Yeah. The Rudy
Like
Gay too.
2017, 2018, Jaylen Brown, like unstoppable.
He peaked.
Before he got washed.
Yeah.
I have not really done that. But you mentioned Pascal, who's like yourself, involved in the art world. Mm-hmm. There have been a series of articles. There was one in the New York Times. There was one I read in the Miami New Times as well. And then a recent one in New York Magazine that detail the rise and fall of
Inigo Philbrick.
Okay, so since you are the art expert here, why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about who this guy is in the context of his ascension and implosion.
Inigo Philbrick was a dealer, middleman, your favorite kind of person.
God damn it.
And long story short, and this is related to my take about this whole thing, he speculated, well, he had backing of a really, really reputable gallery, White Cube, J. Jopling in London, started his own place in Mayfair in London, and was moving big units, bet on a couple of artists that hit it big. He got them on the way up. He drafted well. And then these players, these painters, defenses started adjusting to them, and they still sold their paintings for millions of dollars, but the market kind of like mellowed for them. And he got kind of desperate and started selling off shares of paintings that he was going to sell to other people. So people were investing in like a $7 million painting, partial shares of it. So when he eventually sold it, they would get their investment back plus profit. And it was whatever. I think Ponzi schemes are one of the most natural things to think about in life when you have a bunch of stuff that's valuable. So
look, as a fantasy basketball league commissioner, I fully approve of Ponzi schemes.
Ponzi boys. Yeah, I mean, I think Ponzi schemes are natural, and sometimes they work out for a long period of time. I think they should probably not be in play when people's lives are in matter, but whatever.
Probably not. You're like kind of okay with a Ponzi when people's lives are at stake, but like maybe not.
Well, like the stock market.
Take a stand for once, Kuo. You can't go against Ponzi schemes when people's lives are at stake. You can't draw a line in the sand.
So
You're like, no, I will not.
I mean, a lot of people get rich on Ponzi schemes and like leave before they can get like the downside of it.
Pro Ponzi over here.
The stock market does not behave any that differently than a Ponzi scheme sometimes. You know, like
That's true.
the whole world is kind of based off of speculation, and when it goes bad, we hammer people, but when it doesn't, we kind of let it go even farther, as we're seeing the stock market like hurting all these people now. But anyway, off my soapbox here.
Off your Ponzi horse.
There was these articles written about Philbrick, and he basically lost big, and now he's in hiding, and he is probably facing real criminal consequences for his actions. And there was an article in the New York Times about, I mean, we love scammers. I love scammers. So it was kind of delicious to have this long article written. And then someone on the inside, this Kenny Schachter, who I'm a big fan of, he's an artist critic. He's foremost like a dealer, and then he dabbles in art. He's had art shows recently, and he writes for ArtNet, and so he's also a critic. And he's mentioned the Philbrick in, not by name, but as a player in the art world for a long time, and they were very close friends. And he wrote a big firsthand account of his experience with him.
He was very frank about his own role in driving up the prices of artworks and profiteering off of that. He also talked about partying with this guy and described him as looking like Justin Timberlake. He was, and almost even like it wasn't sexual, but there was a physicality almost to the relationship that he alludes to, where they would get drunk and horseplay and
a lot of drugs and stuff. And
but I was surprised that he would acknowledge his own role in a story in which he ultimately was victimized as well and taken for a lot of money.
Yeah, I think he mentioned like $1.4 million maybe.
Yeah.
Which is a ton of money. That like makes me gasp a little bit. But like the seduction of moving around these decimal points when you're dealing with like artworks. And the one artwork in question, it was like a photorealistic portrait of a young Pablo Picasso, or a middle to young Pablo Picasso, and it was a really wonderful painting. And I'm on the like the painter side of this whole world, so the market side is very different, and the market behaves in ways that I don't quite relate to because my brain can't comprehend the gravity of certain situations like that. But I think the firsthand account that Kenny Schachter wrote about in New York Magazine was really, really fascinating and confessional. And I think it was a good play on his part. I thought it was endearing a bit.
Well, I found the New York Times article about it to be very nuts and bolts. And I got a little lost about 3/4 of the way through when they just kept recounting the specifics of when something was sold and for how much and to who and who owned what part of it. And then it was resold.
Wow.
I couldn't really follow along.
Yeah, and that was maybe that was his lack of talent, because it was so hard to follow even for a reporter who was like, this gets confusing, that I think he got tangled up in numbers, and maybe it caused his downfall a little bit. And like, is this Corona relevant? Like, he was flying high and he had hubris, and America was like, we're not China, we're not South Korea, but we are. And we're all Corey Brewers who run out of talent at the rim. But
well, his talent from these stories was that he was charming and charismatic and carried himself with a ton of confidence.
To certain people, like, you have to write that framework, right? Like, every scammer has to be charming.
So sorry to interrupt you. So can you explain that in the art world terminology? Because art world has a heavy social component. It's, I've covered a lot of events for the Times down at Art Basel, and it's this amalgam of wealth and celebrity, especially early in the week and maybe even particularly maybe a decade ago. But it was unlike anything that I had necessarily seen on a normal basis.
Yeah.
It's just billionaires and collectors and people with incredible notoriety. It's A-Rod and J-Lo and
Miami. Yeah.
the biggest, like literally like the multi-billionaires in Paris Hilton, and everyone's drinking free champagne and dancing on tables.
Yeah. I mean, I've only seen a glimpse of that, mostly, and it's mostly been as surreal as you describe it. And I think a lot of money moves around different industries, and I can imagine, we hear all these stories about Jared Kushner, Michael Bloomberg, and Donald Trump kind of having a life before their public life, hidden uptown at parties that are very exclusive, and they all know each other very, very well. And when people like me and you are privy to kind of being in the room accidentally or not accidentally in those situations, my feeling is always like deep sadness a little bit, being like, oh man, this world exists in this powerful way that I am not even in the discussion of, and again, like I'm on the art making side of this, and I'm so lucky to have my close collaborators kind of protect me from all that stuff. They just tell me to make paintings and go out when I feel like going out, and I don't really have much of a social life anymore, but I can't do that and do what I do. Do you know what I mean?
In the case of Philbrick, are we talking about someone who was able to pull this con on so many people off the strength of charisma, of being a salesman? Is that like all it actually kind of took?
Yeah, I met him before, and I think briefly, and it was like a bygone era. I don't think it happens now. I believe I forget which article detailed it, but this was a distinct moment in time in the art world that is kind of exemplified by behavior like his. Now I think you have a lot more voices in the room, and a lot more like Donovan Mitchell's. Like there's a lot more people being like, this is a citizen's arrest, this is not good artwork, like whatever. But like,
yelling down from the fire escape, shaming
in a White Stripes melody.
Stop selling artwork twice.
No more zombie formalism. I miss zombie formalism. I thought it reminds me of good times. But I think there's like an awareness. It evolved past then. There's awareness of like being reckless with money and being reckless with artist careers, but not totally. It's still happening. When there's profit to be made on anything, you have someone buying 17,000 bottles of Purell.
That individual that you mentioned, there was a story about him, I believe it was in the New York Times, and how he had attempted to corner the market on hand sanitizer.
Smart.
Well, obviously it's immoral and it's unethical. It's not unsmart. But what was interesting about this story was that his attempts to do this got shut down. He was stymied when Amazon,
by ethical Amazon, the most ethical.
Right, exactly. So Amazon stepped up and basically put in restrictions against price gouging on things like hand sanitizer.
And then they raised the prices on theirs.
So right, this is good in that this individual who was trying to behave unethically for his own benefit was stopped from doing so, and then they took away his hand sanitizer, or he donated it because he didn't want to get home invaded and he wanted to repair his reputation or whatever.
People were screaming at him. He was getting death threats. People were showing up at his door. He was getting white striped.
I mean, fair.
Yeah, totally.
I get it. People are like, I'm scared. I can't get this. And he's like, buy it for me for 4 times the cost. And it's like, dude, fuck off. Yeah. People are in danger, and you're keeping them from getting this product. But he may have underestimated how much, like, the potential, like, death and destruction that his behavior could have cost.
Maybe, yeah, but it reminds me of Abacus Bank or even Philbrick, right? Like, remember Abacus Bank was the bank in Chinatown that financed restaurants and small businesses, and during the last crash, they were the only bank that was being investigated. And there was a documentary about it, and be like, wait, what? Like, you guys took America down, and we're the ones the only ones getting investigated, and that's how I feel about this Purell guy. When I heard about it, my first instinct was outrage, obviously, and then it quickly turned into like, oh, this is a disorder, and being scared is really confusing. And when you go around store by store, driving all around your state collecting this, that is fear, right?
I would disagree. I think it was just naked profiteering. That he's like, this is it. This is my bold move that will pull me from poverty. Fear? I mean, we're talking about fear of a disease versus fear of failure. You know, like I don't know what we're
I saw that
these things together, but I mean, I view it as a naked profiteering. I can't say I thought he was scared of coronavirus and needed 17,000 things of, I'm going to make my entire house out of Purell bottles and live within it because I'm terrified.
Well, like Gen X Tranquility, I was like, he needs probably help in a way we can't even like talk about right now, because that's odd behavior, but predictable behavior. And I think even psychiatrists would be like, oh, he's doing a thing. And
I just thought he was trying to quadruple his money.
But that's like something someone does. If something scary happens, like a pandemic, you're like, holy shit, how can I make money? More. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm not buying all the toilet paper. I have like 2 normal packs of toilet paper in my house currently. And if I don't have any, it's American bidet time. But like, if people are buying all the toilet paper, I'm like, this is a behavior that I can relate to.
I would agree with you if he was just stashing 17,000 bottles of Purell for his own use, because he's like, 20 years from now, when Purell has been off the market for 15 years, I will be king. But it's not the same as people stashing toilet paper because they think they're going to need to use it. They're not like, I'm going to hold on to 500,000 things of Charmin and I'm going to sell them off at 3 times the profit.
Charmin boys.
But to the point that you were getting at before, which I do agree with, is that he was pinpointed as the calamity profiteer, the worst version of naked capitalism in the face of disaster. Meanwhile, this is all that the insurance companies have been doing for years, and pharmaceutical companies is jacking up prices and against people who need their medicine. It's literally the American way of our healthcare system. And you're like, this is the guy. Get him.
I
like,
know.
Dude, that's what every company and insurance company and pharmaceutical manufacturer has been doing. That's our whole grievance.
Philbrick is a Ponzi dude. I'm like, right, only him. Sure.
He's the Ponzi?
Yeah. We got the Ponzi. It's Bernie Madoff too. There's only 2 of them. But it makes me think of that dumb show Billions and Axe Capital, who profited off of 9/11 while everyone was scrambling to make sure people were okay. He was gaming the stock market, and it's for sure happening right now. I think there's people down in Wall Street or even in front of their computer just like strategizing and getting rich off this stuff.
For sure. And I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised at all because there have been, I've read articles about how there are odd trades that happen before, say, Trump does announcements.
Oh, yeah, totally.
That people are moving money in and out as if they know what he's going to say.
Weird.
And when he did that press conference with the CEOs of places like Walmart.
Oh, my God. Like celebrities.
Right before the markets closed.
They're celebrities in their own way.
You know, there were people who knew that was coming, what was going to be said, and pumped money into it, watched it go up, and then sold it off the next night.
And that is illegal. That is illegal. That puts you into jail.
I'm saying there are enough improprieties that people have spotted already to know that this is happening.
Yeah. I mean,
or allegedly happening. However we want to say it, because I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
But people have spotted these kind of markers in trading that are specifically tied to government announcements.
And not to get into politics.
Doesn't seem like something they would do.
Right, and not to get into a Bernie discussion because we'll fly off the rails, but this is his popularity, right? Because he's the only candidate who's like, guys, this has to stop. We're all seeing this, right? Like, you guys see this, I see this.
Last honest man in America.
Apparently. and that's his popularity with his demographic is really young, and I think we all see this happening, and we all see these old white guys. First of all, when we have like daily news conferences with experts for Corona, this super team, and there's no Asian on it, I get worried, man. And Trump's been trying to frame this as the China virus, which has a ring to it. I have to admit, it has a ring.
But how do you feel about it? I know you are hard to offend, but how do you feel about it when they call it the Wuhan virus and Trump's like,
It's
nah,
China
fuck
virus.
it, it's the China virus.
Yeah.
And Tom Cotton's like, they're gonna pay.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get offended because I just accept these terms of life. I accept terms that people have to put things into boxes to describe their feelings, and those boxes might not coincide with the way I frame it. But I kind of smirk, but I'm not angry. It's not because, I mean, Trump is many things, but in this case, I think it's about him deflecting blame more than anything. It's about him being like, remember that it wasn't me. I'm like, all right, whatever. And morons will catch on to it, but peer pressure is squashing that whole term. It has a ring, though.
I suppose there could be an argument that convincing his base that there is an alien invasion underway and that they need to get inside and they need to be shamed from the fire escape into getting off Daytona Beach, that the enemy is foreign and Chinese instead of something that's just a typical virus that's bouncing around and has no discretion whatsoever. Maybe there's a minimal advantage to making people fear it as if it is a China virus.
Yeah. I was talking with a 10-year-old at an opening before the life of Corona V took over, but I was just talking to one of my friend's kids, and we were talking about, like, oddly, anime. He was obsessed with anime and all these characters he was telling me about and all these witchy spells that he wanted to cast on other characters. And then we got to coronavirus, and he was like, oh God, Chinese people, like, I don't want that. Like, China is the reason why this whole world is going down. And some guy next to me was like, yo, you ever been to China, kid? That place is amazing. Like, it's an incredible country. And I really thanked him for that. He was white. And I felt like I couldn't really say anything because I didn't have agency there being Chinese. But I was really grateful for him sticking up for me a little bit to a 10-year-old. But, it's like, I just imagine what this kid was thinking in
But why would you
school.
feel like you don't have agency as the Chinese guy in that conversation?
Oh, because I'm obviously going to say, like, hey, man, like, the world is a complicated place, and, like, the blame isn't where you think it is all the time, But, I didn't feel comfortable saying that to my friend's kid.
Dumpling bias, eh?
I was born with the D bias. But I was grateful for my friend sticking up for an entire half of the world.
Wow, multiple billions of people's ears just got a little bit red.
Yeah, as he was showing me anime characters on his iPhone, I was like, yo, man, China is a wonderful place of a lot of advancements.
Well, shifting a little bit to basketball here. When you're talking about Ponzi schemes, that was one of those phrases that got lobbed at Sam Hinkie, the former Sixers general manager, because of how he treated the draft. Whether it was true or not, it was definitely not. It was not true in that, like, he wasn't. Whatever. I don't really know the best way of saying that Sam Hinkie was not a Ponzi artist, but the idea of using the draft and succeeding out of your own failures, I think, was part of this theology. Right now, it looks as if the NBA draft will not have combines or workouts or even the ability for players to meet in person with teams outside of maybe, a FaceTime interview. As the resident draftnik amongst the Cookies Hoops collective.
Not saying much.
Doesn't
No present. Yeah, not to offend the present company, but it's not saying much.
No. What does this mean for the seniors, juniors, freshmen, sophomores, the new players entering the NBA? and the NBA teams. What does this mean for the draft process itself?
I love it because there's so much bias that happens during March Madness because of the gravity of moments, game-winning shots, teams wanting it more, like these young men kind of like these children turning into men before our eyes, through this tournament. All that's gone. So all those biases that we have of being a dog, wanting it more, being a good teammate, which is yes and no bias, but I think we just have to deal with raw information now because these guys were all in self-care mode before their season was abbreviated. They were heading into their conference tournaments and being like, all right, it's time to show the world what I got. It's like, you guys are done. You're going into the draft as is now. And I think it's going to be a pure distillation of statistics and less eye test than we've ever seen before. So I'm really excited to see how this shapes out, albeit two of the top 3 players were hurt already.
I would disagree that it'll be more about statistics. I think it will be a lot of watching tape.
So more eye test.
I think people always watch tons of tape, but I think it will really come down to tape and statistics in a way that those narrative points that you identified will not be a part of the equation. Yeah. I don't think people are going to be like, all right, tell me who scored the most points in the Southeastern Division League.
But not that, but like on-off splits, it's like player tracking. That's the only information we have. There's not enough, right? Because I think Weissman is the only center projected in the top 20, and he hasn't played forever because he was disqualified and left his school for stupid reasons. And LaMelo's been hurt.
In your opinion, will this lead to more draft busts and botched picks or less?
I think it stays the same because I think the top 20 players are the top 20 players no matter what. But to that point, the top players in the lottery are pretty solid. Obviously, I think Edwards has potential to be a bust because he can't really shoot. But like these are good enough prospects where you're not looking at a Kwame Brown. You're not guessing as much as we did with like Anthony Bennett. Well, that was an anomaly. That doesn't count.
Well, I guess what I'm wondering is that the tournament does have that ability in terms of perception to separate the wheat from the chaff. A guy who...
Chaff boys.
But, a couple guys,
say
5 guys who are in the same area, let's say, might be drafted in the late lottery.
Dwayne Wade benefited from this whole process.
I would say that someone probably profits every year and someone gets hurt by it. Granted, it only takes one team to decide that you should go higher. Mm-hmm. But in the most part, we've seen this happen, that conference and league championship tournaments and the final and March Madness do play a significant role in how people get drafted and perceived.
Yeah, Mateen Cleaves, he got drafted because Michigan State went so far, and I think they won it all, and he wasn't quite an NBA caliber player.
One of the best sideline cheerleaders, however, in league history.
Mateen?
Oh, yeah. He could wave that rally towel like nobody's business.
He had kind of a tragic life, right? Was his sibling murdered maybe in Detroit? I forget. But I remember him being kind of a tragic story. Anyway, Khalid El Amin really benefited from the big stage of... Yeah, you're right. It happens all the time. Gordon Hayward.
So what I'm saying is, I don't know how it affects it, though, one way or the other, because there's certainly guys who may really explode and play phenomenally well against very good competition that is indicative of them having a higher level of talent than maybe they demonstrated over the course of a season. Opportunity, eyeballs, like it could happen. Mm-hmm. But there are also guys who might just hit a hot streak. And they're, the 3 ball is just splashing for like 2 weeks straight. And they go from shooting 33% and then they shoot 45% over 5 games. And all of a sudden, this guy is a shooter that you can get in the late first round.
And these kids are still growing, so identifying a Dwayne Wade who's streaking in March Madness, like his arc is still on the way up. And any more information we have is better for this whole process. Maybe what I'm saying is I will enjoy the chaos of this draft this year.
Maybe that's the best way of looking at it, that there is less information, which is bad, but there will also be less, I
certainty,
guess, recency bias. So maybe it just evens itself out.
Yeah, I think it'll even itself out. And the gaggle of players I'm most interested in will not have been playing in March Madness. Like, I'm interested in Weissman. I'm interested in LaMelo. Halliburton's hurt. LaMelo's hurt and not in America. So, like, those are the guys I was keen on anyway. I love March Madness. I miss it, but I'm very looking forward to the chaos of this draft process, especially if we're not even evaluating players like you said, like with meetings and individual workouts and all that.
And we don't even know when specifically this will happen. It could be that the NBA finals end in July or August, and this happens, 5-6 months after they've stopped playing.
It's going to be weird. And I heard this is Silver's chance to enact a lot of the changes in the schedule he was thinking of, because if we have such a regularity, he could just see how it goes with his ideas of a mid-season tournament, starting the season at different times. This is the time to make a change.
I agree. One thing that I've been considering a little bit is that if there's no regular season, if suddenly we say playoffs start, which is on the table right now and could very well occur, these guys will have been, and I'm talking about pros now, not the college players, the pros will have been inactive for, let's say, 3 months. Dudes who are used to burning calories, exercising constantly, eating a lot. There are certainly guys who are equipped with home gyms. There are probably some guys who are not. We might see some people come back ridiculously out of shape and then thrust immediately into the playoffs. We could be looking at some exceptionally bad basketball.
It's the large lad league?
I'm serious, man. Like, no disrespect to Zion, but Zion
Never.
sitting around doing nothing for 3 months, what's he going to look like?
Did you see Trae Young doing a 3-point shootout with socks and his laundry bin?
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
But, like, can Trae Young get to a gym? He doesn't have an insane amount of money. He probably does not live in a huge house with his own gym and his own basketball court. There are older guys who have those things, but Trae Young probably doesn't.
No, I agree. And they'll get into shape soon. I think this virus has an arc to it, and eight weeks, hopefully, is realistic. But you're right. Like, with all this takeout, it goes back to our working. Like, I am eating everything, man.
That's what I mean. These guys, they don't have their private chefs in their household anymore. They're not eating team meals. They're just ordering off of Seamless, which is unethical.
Yeah, I am eating my feelings for 2. I'm like, it's time to have more Stouffer's French bread pizza, I guess.
You and Trae Young and every other young guy in the NBA.
These young bucks. Me and Joe Biden just like making it hard for the old heads.
Goddamn kids.
Malarkey.
Speaking of another very young athlete, your favorite, Tom Brady, the leader in some ways of the Boston media mafia,
Their king.
has announced that he's leaving the Bean. How do you feel about that?
Well, first of all,
This is about football, of course, so let's just...
I'm going to put you
this
in the
is
sin bin and throw away the keys at this point.
I'm setting you up. I don't follow football. This was
it's my
taking
fault.
this was me taking the sin bin for your sins.
It sounds like a Ponzi take. You're just setting me up. You're just
Ponzi Wells.
I think it's interesting because you're right. Like, Brady is an untouchable athlete and the symbol of Leprechaun Nation. And you know, like, if you think about the themes of the Bagpipe Boys, it's like wanting it more, loyalty, being a good teammate.
Playing
all these,
the right way.
yes, those are the tenets of
Championships.
the corned beef crew. But and Brady had all of those until he met an interesting person in his life, which was his lovely wife, Giselle. I forgot her last name, but like, she's so famous, she's known by her first name. And I think
I believe you're speaking about Giselle Bundchen.
Is it Gazelle? I've been
Giselle
saying
Bundchen, right?
Yeah. I mean, super famous, right? And like, her worldly influence on him was so distinct, where he would show up and be like, "Is that a haircut?" It's like, is he wearing like a different silhouette? Like,
those are definitely Uggs.
yeah.
I can spot an Ugg.
Yeah, but
from a paparazzi's lens away, and those are Uggs.
But you could sense Tom Brady changing a little bit, and he was playing with the media more. He would leave out more bait and kind of mess with people. He a better sense of humor. He was seen dancing at
a coyly placed MAGA hat in his locker.
Yeah, seriously. But he was changing a little bit, and maybe that was a remnant of his past. Like, who knows? But so he'd been planning this departure for a while, and I thought he was just going to resign. I thought this was just going to like drum up some popularity. It's like, he's a hero. He returned to us. But he announced today that he was actually going to live his best life and try a new experience. And life is short, and you just have to turn over more rocks, Ben. And it throws the ethos back into the face of the bagpipe bros.
In some ways, he has drop kicked the Murphys to the curb.
Yeah, who's getting drop kicked? Are you drop kicking me, or am I being drop kicked? I think it's a cool thing for every player to do. I was really into LeBron James and the decision, and him going to check out a new scene. And Brady's at the end of his career, and he's not good anymore. So like, this is a blessing in disguise a little bit.
Would you say that Gillette Stadium is now a house of pain?
Relegation nation, man. House of Pain is from California, man.
I know. Yeah, all of them.
And Cypress Hill is from California. That's weird.
And as is Funk Dubious, if we're going through the entire Soul Assassins collective. If that's where you're trying to go with this, we can do it.
I have not thought about the Soul Assassins in 15 years, but today's that day, man.
It was coming.
It was bound to happen.
And here we are. So, switching this to a reasonable sport that adults like, basketball.
Definitely.
Can we think of examples of players, and this is a topic we touched on maybe, who knows, an episode ago? It all rolls together.
Was it yesterday, or was it?
I honestly have no idea.
Was Jordan on vacation? I forget.
That he was. About players leaving in the twilight of their careers, whether it's because of their own desire to play longer, or a team wanting to sever ties and go with the younger guy at the same position. And I think one comparison we could use, and it does not have the same championship timber, but Patrick Ewing was a guy who spent his entire career in New York and then was sent off to Seattle in a way that no one really liked, and kind of gave his career a sour ending.
Well, at least the Knicks got a haul back. I think they got Howard Isley, Knicks legend, Shannon Anderson. Man, those were some amazing years with Shannon Anderson.
I feel like they ate a bad contract in that deal as well. But more to the point, do you think that tarred the relationship between the Knicks and Ewing in a way that has ever actually been scrubbed clean?
That's a whole drama that's unfolding still. Yeah, I do. I think Ewing had feelings being sent to Siberia, which famously Clyde Frazier called Milwaukee Siberia after Knicks traded him there. And I did. Well, Ewing was also a wonderfully sour dude, and you saw it on the court, and that's kind of why New Yorkers with their lunch pails loved him so much. He played with a bitterness that was very appealing, and as a person, he maybe showed some of that as well, and I kind of love that. I love Patrick Ewing. I think he's the top 5 Knick after Jeremy Lin. But it does fly in the face of the BMM narrative of playing for one team is an achievement. And that doesn't take into account like the needs of that team. You know, we always forget that Kobe was demanding a trade to New York for a summer, and things worked out and he stayed. Do you want to be, I'm trying to think of players that stayed. Like, do you want to be Tim Duncan? Of course you do. Those three have that story. But Olajuwon changed teams. Barkley changed teams. Shaquille O'Neal kept on moving around. Like, it's okay. Like, Vince Carter is amazing, regardless of championships and the uniform he wears.
There is a certain sentimentality that makes sense.
It's
when
sweet.
When a player and a team spend their entire career together, because it also shows a rare level of commitment from both sides.
And
the
excellence.
Player,
Yeah.
exactly. That the player didn't leave for greener pastures, and that the team felt similarly about that player. That their synergy was respectful and made sense from day one to whatever the conclusion of their relationship was. And guys like Kobe, Dirk Nowitzki, they're held in a certain sense of prestige that maybe someone like Vince Carter isn't. Mm-hmm. And it makes me think about the Spurs. We consider Tim Duncan and David Robinson at this pinnacle of that kind of loyalty. And Manu Ginobili spent his entire career there, although it was shorter because he came over from Europe when he was an older player.
I forgot Parker played in... Yeah, go ahead.
I was about to say, but Tony Parker didn't have that same relationship, and he spent a couple years in Charlotte at the end of his career. Did it matter? Do we think of Tony Parker differently? Is it utterly forgettable? Or is a little bit of it like Tony Parker went to Charlotte?
A little bit, right?
I kind of feel like there's a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you can't deny it. It is what it is. We got to see him in a different uniform, and I feel really a certain way about Seattle and the Supersonics. And, you know, Kevin Durant was a Sonic before he was a Thunder. And seeing him switch uniforms like that beyond his control was funny. I was like, oh, now he's in that lump, that pile, you know?
I know. It's very boomer to care about a player spending their whole career with one franchise.
Yeah.
And I can't deny that a little part of me is like, oh, the glove went and tried to ring Chase and wore a Lakers uniform.
I know. The one we let slide the most is obviously Jordan, because I've even had arguments this year, LeBron versus MJ, where the person's like, well, MJ played for one team. LeBron just goes everywhere he wants. I'm like, not true, but okay, you know, like I get it because he was such an icon, but it was really strange to see him in a Wizards uniform. But we got over it and we adjusted, and life after Corona V will be different. But there's something cool about a player staying. I'm not even going to be I'm not going to be Zoomer about this. It's cool when a player plays for one team because that means they've been good for so long that the team wanted them back and held on to them, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, I would hope that we're enlightened enough that we can respect those guys, those Dirk Nowitzkis, as well as the Dwayne Wades, guys who jumped around at the end of their career.
Yeah.
And we also were like, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
He wasn't actually on the Bulls or Cavs.
Yeah.
Dwayne Wade, Heat, never been anywhere else. We just collectively erased those
Cleveland
all those
Cavalier
games,
great
those
Dwayne
minutes.
Wade.
Never happened.
Yeah.
But I also like the idea of a hyper-futuristic mercenary
Oh,
who
yeah.
just
Let's do it.
bounces around, going where they want, winning championships, and just saying, like, fuck off to
Creative
franchises and teammates and fans. And it's just like, I go where I want. And I think I was hoping that Kevin Durant would be that guy, but he wasn't. Kawhi kind of might be. He's the most heartless athlete that I can think of, the most motivated by his own ends, which seem to be financial. Mm-hmm. So there may not be a better position for him to be in than Los Angeles from a financial standpoint. Mm-hmm. But if Kawhi says, New York, I can get even more money there, I think he'll do it.
God, he's breaking down. But isn't LeBron in that conversation?
But LeBron cares, right? He went back to Cleveland.
Yeah, true.
I don't think Kawhi has even a fraction of that sort of sentimentality that LeBron clearly has.
Yeah, shout out to the social security net of the NBA at Madison Square Garden. So many great players end their careers there. It's wild. So many guards and forwards.
So that's the thing. Why not let Ewing do it? You know, they traded him and they got back Glenn Rice, who was overpaid and also aging at the same time. And then Glenn Rice ended up being traded for like Mitch Richmond or something. And it kind of snowballs under Scott Bin Laden into a series of bad contracts that really the Knicks kept digging a bigger and bigger hole. Why didn't they let Ewing just play out his career as a Knick and be a hero?
I mean, why do people run Ponzi schemes to, you know, it kind of snowballs, right? And you think the next move is going to fix your previous mistake. And obviously the Knicks are run by someone with feelings, with maybe not Gen X tranquility. And he's spiteful, and he gets grudges. He develops grudges against certain players. And Ewing is a very smart guy. Remember, he was the head of the players union for a while. And he's like really intelligent, really opinionated, and present. And I don't think Dolan really meshes with personalities like that.
If people want to learn more about Ewing, and I certainly learned about him in this, there's the documentary that Ezra Edelman, a former Cookies guest and an Academy Award winner for the O.J. Simpson documentary, he made one about the Big East that really focused on the rivalry between Georgetown, who he is a fan of, and a lot of was about Syracuse as well. So, you know, growing up upstate, Cuse versus Georgetown,
Connecticut,
that was huge.
St. John's.
He kind of left UConn out of it for the most part.
Oh.
In his doc. They're in it, and as are, you know, Villanova and St. John's. But it really focuses a lot on Georgetown and Syracuse because that was a marquee rivalry.
They were good.
And the treatment that Ewing received from Syracuse fans, from the media, was really cruel and really unfair. It was racist at times. And Ewing is, to your point, a much more complicated character, I think, than he was ever given credit for outside of being an outstanding basketball player, who then was kind of viewed as a choker.
Yeah, and he
Like,
was.
there's a lot more to Ewing than his basketball narrative.
Oh man, he's not a choker to me, but like he was notoriously cold with the media, and very articulate, not unlike Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Very, very bright people who are always good for an amazing interview, but didn't really have a good relationship with management or the media. And in the NBA, like in every other world, like you have to kind of sidle up to the people who will frame what you are in the way that you want to be framed. And Ewing in New York is interesting. This week, you know, Charles Oakley took his shots at Ewing, and it fell to deaf ears because what? You know, like Patrick Ewing, although didn't have that like that Jordan optic, he ruled this city for a decade, and I don't think we don't appreciate him at all. We love that guy.
To contemporize this conversation, though, I think about Joel Embiid, another guy who did not grow up in the United States, who started playing basketball later in life and became a star. And
Happy birthday, Joe.
is it his birthday?
I think it was yesterday.
No.
Maybe.
And had the weight of a city's basketball hopes on his shoulders. I think there are some comparisons to be made.
Yeah.
Between Joe and Patrick Ewing. And Joe is far more open and charming, but he's also clearly an emotional guy. And when the media attacks him for being out of shape or lazy, and these sort of lame creations of the media that have no basis in reality, you can tell that it bothers him. And I really do wonder if there are two sort of ways that it can be played, where you can be Patrick Ewing and be very cold, or you can be someone like Embiid who has shushed the Sixers crowd, who has said stuff online about potentially leaving. And I think people underestimate, especially with today's millennials and guys who have more options about where they can play, and there's far more mobility for the modern athlete than there was during Patrick Ewing's era, due to shorter contracts and their own power and agency that they have now. people have to be really careful about alienating someone like Joel Embiid. And I do think that the media's relationship with players can play a far bigger role than we give it credit for.
When you say be careful, do you mean the fans of his, or as a society being like kind to people?
No, I mean, I think media and fans can drive athletes away from a city in a way now that they probably, the players could not have been able to react in the way that they can now.
I agree. And I think the Philly will be the petri dish for this, because that fan base is awesome, but also very critical and very under the spell of the BMM. And they're kind of being puppet mastered by all these ideas that we have to train ourselves not to care about. Like, there is no right way to play. There is no wanting it more. They all want it enough. And there's no correct way to do this. And we secretly really enjoy the characters like Joel Embiid and his like mastery of social media, but we hammer him because that's not us. We're not
and
as
the same, you know, and this is obviously a topic we've talked about a zillion times, but just the treatment from the media towards like Ben Simmons, the fans booing the team. Like, these guys can leave.
Yeah.
They can force their way out. Anthony Davis did it, and it wasn't as if he was mistreated. He wasn't mad at the Pelicans fans. He wasn't mad at their media.
I mean, Porzingis kind of did it.
KD did it.
Yeah.
KD, I don't think ever was the same.
Yeah. Kobe tried to do it.
After the local media turned on KD, and I don't think he was the same after that.
I agree. Yeah, when Kobe tried to do it, it was sort of like crunch time Kobe. He airballed and stayed in LA.
I do think we have to usher in, led by the Cookies Hoops podcast, naturally, an era where we are far more forgiving of players. Because, you know, if you watch a game and a player goes 0 of 13, do you think he's not trying to make those shots?
I know, seriously.
Do you think he's not trying his hardest? Like, that's just how it goes. Have you never played basketball and gone 0 for 13? It happens all the time.
I think of Amari Stoudemire and that pressure on his shoulders in New York. The dude tried so hard. He was just running in the opposite direction or like jumping at the wrong time. I really love Amari, but effort wasn't it. And he was framed as somebody who was like just coasting on his contract. Like, no, this guy, you could see the frustration on his face being like, I don't understand why I'm not the MVP. I'm like, because it's really hard to be MVP, dude. There's one, you know?
And when you watch a player out there who is not a good defender, it's easy to get annoyed at them.
Yeah.
You know, as a watcher, you can be like, oh man, this guy is not defending for shit. They're trying.
Yeah, I know.
Blame the coach. Blame the general manager. Players are doing their best.
I know.
I sound like Andrew Kuo.
Centrist ass takes. But no, I agree. And like, it's interesting because the biggest fear of a Philly fan is to not have a team with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons in their prime.
It's also their dream.
Right. Yes, because
we've got to trade one of them. Yeah, but what if one of them forces a trade? Oh, I don't like that at all.
Right. And you know, there's that feeling that you should be able, you know, this is what it is. Criticality, booing, all these things are the experience of being a fan. Cookie's proposal is, what if it isn't? What if, like, y'all should... I want ESPN to be funny. I want Barstool to be funny. I want Fox Sports to be funny. I want WFAN to crack me up. Like, that sounds better than just being like, you know who's a dog in a bad way? So-and-so. Fill in the blank.
And that's why I can't really rock with the TNT breakdowns and criticisms of
they used
players.
To be so funny.
And, you know, respect to Charles Barkley. I know
genius.
He said he has the corona.
A week ago or something, right? Like last week.
So hopefully he's fully recovered and doing great.
Agreed.
I'm not trying to badmouth a guy who is ailing with a national pandemic.
He feels like our friend. We've watched him on TV for so long.
Yeah. So I'm not specifically trying to go after him. I just mean this idea that you watch a game and you criticize the players for not shooting well or not being aggressive or not wanting it. Like, that's bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah,
I just cannot abide by that. I'm don't get mad at players in that regard, and we used to, and the way that I used to criticize like Jahlil Okafor and just roast him constantly. I feel bad about that. That was harsh. Yeah. He was trying his best. He was just slow afoot.
He's in the wrong era, right?
Yeah, and I should not have been as cruel to him as I was. And I've thought about that. And the only players that should be roasted are members of the Boston Celtics.
But as soon as they leave the Celtics, they're good.
And the Portland Trailblazers. I'm sorry.
I'm so rested all of a sudden. Is the coronavirus done? You said Blazers, and I woke up. Is it a new world now?
Rip City Van Winkle.
But right, like I think it's a much more enjoyable thing if we stop criticizing players in an automatic way. I mean, criticality will be there, being like, "Ooh, you just don't got it tonight," and that's okay. But if we could see it with a little more self-awareness, it just makes more jokes. And I used to love TNT so much because they were so funny, but now they've changed, as you have changed for the better, but maybe they've changed for the worse, in my opinion. And Barkley is just like a cop now.
I don't know if they've changed, or it's that society has kind of moved on, because if you look at the dynamic, it's inevitably going to be shitty. Let's take all-time great players and have them criticize guys who almost always aren't as good as them, even though they know that some days you're just off.
Yeah.
Some days the defender is doing a good job. Some days you play like garbage. And they know this, and yet they go after guys who are not as good as them, who will never be on their status on the all-time pantheon of great players. Yeah. And ignore their own experience.
Yeah.
Oh, I had a bad game because, I shot poorly, but you have a bad game because you don't have the heart.
Right.
You don't want it. Like you're Charles Barkley. You're Shaquille O'Neal. You are among the best who have ever done it.
Yeah.
No one's as good as you.
No. Yeah, nobody. You guys did it. But let's also not be too naive about it, because if we've joked about how no one talks about how good the Bucks were this year, but it's not that interesting of a story. And as soon as you do bring up how good the Bucks are, like our interns, then it becomes a discussion of how good and who's worse than them. Are they compared to all-time teams? And I think it's easier to feel smart and extrapolate negative ideas quicker than to be like, well, Giannis is great, but how great? It's easier to be like, the Knicks are bad, but how bad?
And I'll also acknowledge that saying, well, yeah, he went 2 of 12, because sometimes you go 2 of 12 does not make for great TV.
No, or pods, but if he goes,
it makes for perfect pods, but it doesn't make for great television. But I do think that there is a balance between pinpointing players that could be criticized for their performance and making it about morality, making it about heart and valor, and talking more about what's happening on the floor, and not just casting it as these are random numbers that are spinning in the wrong direction today. I think you can talk about basketball in a smarter way than it being all about wanting it. I think you can say, well, here's what Nick Nurse has done defensively that is stymieing the opposition by playing sort of a matchup zone. I think you can be a little more granular, and people will appreciate it, versus saying like Dwight Howard's being a big bitch.
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm completely wrong.
No, I'm following you. And this is, if there's any silver lining to this awful time that we're living through, it's when the NBA comes back and when the world kind of awakens back. And I think we will. I think we'll have changed, and we're almost in the era in the NBA of like post advanced analytics. We've consumed them. We've lived with them for so long that we can restart the NBA combining all these things together and be smarter fans and be funnier fans, and not only just be tribal, be like, are you an eye test guy or an analytics guy? I'm like, both. I'm in the middle, because wanting it more is like a really entertaining argument, and like I will have that discussion. It's great. statistics are also amazing. I have that in my pocket. Like, hopefully this will be a new age of like talking about the NBA.
Well, I would agree with that we are post stats,
Yeah.
because there was an embrace amongst the analytics community of composite metrics. Like, how do you rate two players? How do you compare them? And let's come up with equations that create a number. And that way we can put every player in the league, assign them a number, whether they're a guard or a center, a veteran, a role player, a superstar, and we can rank them. And we'll use all these different variables and come up with what we view as like a regression analysis that gives an accurate way to compare players. And moving from box scores to that, I think was really important. And I think we all were searching for a way to get a better grasp of the game, even beyond watching it and raw box scores. But I do think at this point, the rise of stats of play type, location, shooting, dribbling, those advanced metrics feel very worthless at this point. You know, when someone's like, yeah, but he's got like a PIPM of like 4.2, you're like, I don't care.
Yeah.
It's a nice little thumbnail. Cool. It shows he's having a good season. But I think we're, to what you said, I think we now have so many numbers that we can say, well, he's shooting this percentage from here. He's doing this on pick and rolls. He's doing this in the paint. We are getting the ability to really understand what guys are doing on the floor.
Yeah, I agree. And, you say we're in the post-stat age, and I 100% agree. But we're in the middle because eye test people have not won, because we could watch these games and all of a sudden people are talking about shot charts and efficiency and plus minus, which is trash. But all these...
Or maybe we're in the stat era now, where...
It's in the middle, though.
That intermediary, that connective tissue of the BPMs and the PIPMs and... per and win shares. Maybe that was us, the magic that we were trying to conjure to get from box scores to science. We needed something in the middle. And it was that nebulous cloud of opaque stats. Yeah. And now we've cleared that. And now we have actual numbers that are more useful.
And we're moving so fast. I think in the Chucker era, like when scorers like that we love, that were maybe not efficient at times, we celebrated. We don't celebrate in the same way anymore. And I know this is redundant cookie stuff, but even the way we talked about Simmons last year versus talking about Zion this year is an evolution of the way we're looking at it, because they're the same type of argument, but we're framing it in a different way. And like, yes, Zion is awesome. All he should do is dunk. This is good. And we're evolving. And, when a player's on the court and an announcer says like, this player has a higher gravity, I think more of us understand ideas like that. And it just helps the whole enjoyment of everything.
It's very cool that Zion thus far has not been subjected to the kind of bullshit rhetoric and anger and criticism that Simmons has faced for several years. It's also cool that Simmons made everybody eat shit.
Yeah.
That everyone obsessed over his jumper, screamed and cried, and he made them eat shit. He didn't take threes. He straight up refused. He made two and was like, okay, cool, now eat shit.
Yeah.
And became a top 15, borderline top 10 player this season without even thinking about shooting threes for like other than those two. And it's awesome. And everyone just had to shut the fuck up and take it because he proved it. He proved he was great. He proved he didn't need to shoot threes. And then you have Zion, who doesn't take threes, doesn't pass, doesn't defend, and everyone's loving him. He really exposed the hypocrisy. Yeah. But again, the best part about it was that everyone who was complaining and whining and wailing for 2 years straight just had to shut up.
Yeah, and
I love that shit.
There was a bit of willful ignorance with the BMM regarding a player like Simmons, I thought, because I believe at least one time he was asked point blank, like, why don't you shoot threes? And he said in the most honest terms, he's like, I'm not comfortable with that, guys. Like, that shot doesn't feel good to me. I'm on my way. Trust me, I'm working on it. But right now, I don't think it helps my game or my team. And that is so honest. We just bury that kind of sentiment, which I think is like a very reasonable thing to say for a superstar.
And to the point we were making earlier about the relationship between the media and the players and the team, and in Portland during the so-called Jailblazers era, it was a real
Love that
cause
team.
of friction.
Love that team.
The media in Portland was tremendously unfair to them and hated them and vilified them. And that took hold on a national level. And we've seen that in Philadelphia with Ben Simmons. If Sixers media had been chill and supportive and been like, we don't care that he doesn't shoot threes. We can tell you he's awesome.
Yeah.
We're watching him play. He is creating these, he's creating more 3-point assists for anybody in the league. He's efficient. He's an elite defender. All these things. If that had been the story out of Philly, it would not have taken hold amongst the BBM. Excuse me, the BMM.
Yeah. God,
I think it does matter if for the national audience feeds off of what's coming out of a local place.
You just mentioning the Jailblazers and what they are now, and I don't want to say their name because I want to take no minutes off this pod and not pass out. But if the pendulum swings in the way the Jailblazers pendulum swung, and that team was so awesome. You had Ponzi Wells, Rasheed Wallace, Damon Stoudemire. I'm forgetting some other awesome players that were super fun. It was like kind of like an epicenter of interest in the NBA for years. Rasheed Wallace is like one of my favorite players ever, but the Sixers have that now. And if I don't know, if the fan base isn't careful, you're going to chase these guys away, and you're going to get a really boring team with Dame Lillard as like holding the rock for 15 years.
I'm sorry. Can you
You
go
said
back like 15
Dame.
minutes?
Yeah, or an hour or days. I'm not even sure at this point.
Is Corona over?
Yeah, but
Can can I walk outside without someone peeing on me from a fire escape?
in a White Stripes melody. But like, yeah, if the Philly management hears the fans out and they're like, oh, right, you guys don't really respond to these types of players anymore. We're going to get a Dame Lillard too. More Dame Lillard. It's not a cool fate. Like you want Rasheed Wallace and Bonzi Wells.
Be interesting.
Right.
That's it.
Interesting combinations. Yeah.
This is the entertainment business. Be interesting.
Yeah. Interesting combination. So you can be a boring player on an interesting team, and you can be super fun too, you know?
That's the cookies ethos. Be interesting, not necessarily good.
Yeah, good is nebulous.
And with that, we have completed our 5th consecutive weekday pod. We're going to keep it rolling as long as we want it more.
We know what everyone's going through, I think, and we're going to keep potting and keeping everyone company. And tomorrow, maybe some Penguin takes. Not to tease it. Tomorrow, Penguin takes.
Cookies.
Cookies.